are here for the Fix It in Post panel. I am Warren Etheredge, host of The High Bar, founder of the Warren Report, a bunch of other good stuff. Have an amazing panel of actual working professionals, which is enough to distinguish this panel from many others. So, that's why you're here. What?
We love you, Warren.
Thank you. So on that end there, we have the beloved co-founder, president, and post-production supervisor at Clatter and Din. Please welcome the ampersand himself, Peter Barnes. Head of his own production company, doing a lot of post-effects, animation, compositing, all sorts of stuff, and a filmmaker in his own right, having worked with my all-time favorite childhood actor, Roddy McDowall. Please welcome Tim Everett. And now when I mentioned your credit, you seemed a little disturbed by this, but should I not say president, founder of Dubs, Inc., Troy Murison? Should I not say that?
Yeah, don't say that.
Don't say Troy Murison!
Yes.
And a man who I've known for a very, very long time, but seemingly only see once every 5 years or so coming around like the locusts or something. A man who's been an editor in so many different levels, an instructor at the Seattle Film Institute, the guru behind the 48-Hour Film Project, and gosh knows what else. I'm sure there are many things.
Oh, it's too mundane to mention.
A man who doesn't even need a vowel in his first name. Please welcome Kirk Nordenstrom. So you can see we have some talented folks here, and we're going to talk about post-production and hopefully break down the myth of the title of this panel itself, Fix It in Post. Is Fix It in Post really a panacea, or is it just a sign of the increasing laziness of filmmakers nowadays?
Ooh.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
There
you go.
Yeah. For me, Fix It in Post is really just code for we effed up on set, and this is their nice way of transferring blame. That might be a bit cynical, but that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say that fixing it in post, it happens, right?
Yeah.
And every project will have things that need to be corrected in post. You should strive to not ever have to fix it in post. That should be the goal. And the workaround for getting around fixing it in post is typically merely good planning. Mm-hmm. Budgetary things, all those sort of things come into play, but you can typically plan your way around problems in the post world. And we'd much rather be creative and do really cool things and take your film to the next level rather than fix your screw-ups. And so that's my version of it.
Yeah, and
Fair
that
enough?
planning just makes things far less expensive because post-production is not cheap.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
It is cheaper to get it right on set, isn't it?
Well, once again, it's a matter of working with great material that they've done their job on the set. They bring you good things to work with. Mm-hmm. Then you get to have fun, make a really cool film instead of polishing something.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I'll jump in and say that, is this okay? Do I need to pick up?
Fix them, will you? I've been
You
sitting
should
over here
fix
going,
them.
give me that.
We'll fix it in post, don't worry.
Yeah, we'll fix it.
See, there was some planning right there.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll jump in and say specifically to that point, there are some things that if you leave it and say that aren't a big deal to fix in post, that are super easy, that you can save time on set because the meter is running a lot faster on set. You generally have more people involved in production, so the meter's running faster. And there are some things that you can skip and just go, we can fix that in post really easily. Not with sound so much, probably. But visually, from a visual standpoint, there are some things that are really easy to fix, but then there are other things that are a huge catastrophe if you leave them to fix in post. Deciding what those are is sometimes the hard part. That's where pre-planning, consult someone who knows ahead of time, can really get you ahead of the game and make it a smooth operation.
And I mean, along those lines, I mean, one thing I've always tried to teach students and kind of independent producers and directors I've worked with is talk to your vendors. I mean, I work primarily as a freelancer, but I did work at Modern Digital for a couple of years, and I got in there because I asked them questions all the time when I was when my directors wanted to send projects there. I was in over my head, didn't know what I was doing, but I asked questions and they told me, this is how we work. This is how we want our files. Talk to your vendors and they will give you the answers that you need.
It's a very good point. We love to be brought in early. And I mean, certainly there's a line where you don't want to take hours of time asking a huge list of dumb questions. But boy, getting those questions on the table, getting the post people involved before you even shoot is a huge advantage to everyone throughout the process, no doubt about it.
Well, this panel represents decades of experience up here, things that you could definitely troubleshoot in advance. And indie filmmakers typically don't have that much experience going into their projects. Really, how many times has a filmmaker come to you in advance and asked questions about what the potential pitfalls may be? Tim,
That's why we're here.
That's why.
Yeah. No, every time when I work, because I work like as a visual effects supervisor, so I'll go on set when they're shooting green screen and make sure everything's okay. So I always work with people like way in advance, even like in the early storyboarding stages, to make sure that they're boarding things that can be done and everything. But somebody said when you get on set, everything's moving so fast, and the truth is, whenever I get on the set and they go, "Can we just shoot? It's going to be a problem." It's like, yeah, we'll fix it in post.
So even you will say.
Oh yeah, because there's nothing, because movies are like a steamroller. Once they're going, they've got to get their 20 or 30 shots a day, and you just can't say, sorry, it's a complete relight, start all over again. You've completely blown it. And
you hired the wrong actors.
Yeah, and we've got, it's a 4-hour reset, to get this just right, and instead you just go, okay, don't worry about it, we'll figure it out. And at least you know what the problems are before you get there. But yeah, so no matter how much consulting you do in advance, you still get on the set and you're just like flattened. So.
But even getting the opportunity to consult up front is tough sometimes. We'll often get the call, they've already got a fine cut done before they even talk to us the first time. And if there's one thing we want to get across, it's yes, call early, call often, and we'll tell you when you've asked too many questions and it's time to stop. But it's respect. We respect people that call us early on and say, we're thinking about doing this, let's do it right. And one thing about, I think, the film community in Seattle and its maturization. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.
I read that in the car on the way. But the film scene in this area getting better and maturing is huge, and it's tangible. And I had a person call me the other day and say, let me take you out to lunch. I want you to come to my set because I have some potential issues with sound, and would you mind coming over and having a look? And it's like, nobody does that. And that's a really important process. And it was, I think I respect this person already for having taken the time to do that. And it's something that is usually free, or it might cost you lunch, but it's an amazing thing to do. And so please don't hesitate to ask those questions.
Well, audio is a biggie, and I remember one of my favorite things was watching a friend of mine shoot a fight scene on a gravel driveway and trying to get sound at the same time, and was convinced that somehow it would all come out okay, which it didn't. All you heard was
Right.
But as a friend of mine said, sound is hard, and that was his reason for moving onwards. What is the biggest mistake you see with audio shot on location?
Well, I think it's just general respect. I think that filmmakers in the past, I think, have concentrated 80-90% of their effort on the picture and the story, and sound has been an afterthought. I just finished up a film, which I'm going to not mention the name of it, but beautifully shot, great story, great actors. The sound was absolutely atrocious. They just screwed up. Hired the wrong person, used the wrong technique, whatever it was. He spent at least 3 times the allocated budget just to fix it, because it looked so good that you couldn't scrap the film. You had to finish it. But it sounded so bad that it was either ADR for a bunch of the scenes, which is very expensive, because if your audio sucks, if your production dialogue sucks, you've got to not only replace the production dialogue, but you've got to replace ambiances around this, all the types of things that you built into your offline edit, that once you take out that crappy dialogue, your film sounds completely different. So you have to go back and fill that with ambience and Foley and whatnot. And so I mean, that was just a horrendous mistake. We finally are going to release the film like next week. But I mean, we have, 100, 150 hours into primarily dialogue repair. Plus, that's prohibited us from taking a look at the sound design and the feel and the feel of the film, which is really what we'd rather be doing. We don't want to fix, we want to create. So.
Kirk, you work with a lot of young filmmakers going through the 48-hour film project, which is sort of the antithesis of pre-planning to a certain extent.
Pretty much, yeah.
But do you think that kind of experience that a lot of people think could be, so useful for them as filmmakers actually does better prepare them for real, legitimate productions?
A lot of people that have gone through it, they will say that it's a great training ground, and largely they learn by the mistakes they make. Then they say, yeah, we really should have thought about sound, but we didn't. And sound really is the thing that sound and music really just glues everything together and takes it to that. Now it's a film instead of a home movie. And yeah, I think an experience like the 48 or the Renton Film Frenzy or any of the time competitions really trains people, and you make the mistakes. And luckily, it's a kind of low impact way of learning those mistakes. Just putting that extra time and thought into getting proper sound, getting proper coverage, is ultimately going to make the post-production experience an enhancement of your story rather than trying to fix the story. You want that at whatever level you're working, whatever budget level you're working at, you want all of your money for each, pre-production, production, post, finishing. You want all of your money going towards enhancing rather than fixing, and that really just comes down to pre-production and really having a well-run set, because then you get good footage, you get good sound, the editor's running, firing on all four cylinders, and post isn't about making it work; it's about making it the best it can be.
Making it great.
Exactly.
Well, you allude to a pretty important distinction there, which is editorial versus post, right?
Yes.
Can you share that, because a lot of people miss out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just think post-production is, it's just
Making the DVD.
yeah. But I mean,
Recording the commentary.
But editorial is, I think, a stage that needs to be. It's linked to post-production, but it's not the same thing. I mean, post-production is, color grading, sound design, mixing. It's all, all the things, it's really putting the spit and polish on it and, gluing it all together. And editorial is really the storytelling aspect. Because not all editors are good at After Effects, Pro Tools, color. A lot of editors are they're just good storytellers. They know exactly how to match up this frame with that frame, and it's a different skill set. And you get someone who's really good with the whiz-bang aspects of post-production, but has a copy of Premiere or Avid and can hack something together. You'll have a great looking piece of crap.
That's great effects.
That's what Hollywood's all about.
Yeah, exactly.
Tim, I'm curious, as somebody who started out as a proven storyteller, right? And you did that, why go to the other side of it?
Because it was fun.
Yeah?
Yeah, because, well, I got involved because of the beginning of computer animation, and nobody was doing it back then, and just people were calling, and the studios were calling. So I was trying to break through the glass ceiling to get into the studios, and it seemed like a good way to go meet everybody, to at least meet all the post people. And then one thing led to the next, and next thing you know, you got a career. So.
It's just that easy, folks.
Yeah. As long as they keep calling you, you're doing great. But one thing I wanted to say on this panel, which occurred to me while we're talking, is we're always talking about fixing it in post, and it's going to be expensive and pre-plan and everything. But I want to give you the optimistic thing. Like, the good news is it's never been less expensive because everything's digital now. Back in the day when it was all in 35 millimeter film and you needed to fix a shot or you wanted to enhance a shot, it was all in optical printers, and it cost tens of thousands of dollars just for the materials. and the lab and stuff, and now it's just zeros and ones on a desktop. And as long as you know how to do it, it's mouse clicks. And so it's never been easier. And the one thing I want to encourage everybody to do is when we're talking about, fixing it in post, and what we just mentioned was like enhancing stuff and making it great, is you might come back with some shots that need to be fixed, but once you're in the post-production process, these days on major films, every single shot gets tweaked. When people do DIs, not these days, but since they've been doing DIs, the amount of work that goes in on those because you can is enormous, and you don't appreciate it because it's all slick and perfect by the time you see it on the screen. But vignetting and changing a little some values in the background compared to the key lights on the characters, and adding cleaning up a little parking lot that's got an ugly car that you didn't intend back there and stuff like that. I'm serious. The amount of work that goes on every single shot is now enormous, because it's pretty simple and pretty easy and pretty inexpensive compared to the old days.
And to your point, sorry, let me interrupt,
Yes,
but you finish first.
Well, no, that's basically it. It's a great world. It's a great world that we can take any footage and improve it. We can do sky replacements and put in some extras and do so many thousands of little things all the way through the film that there's really no limit. It's really just how much time you've got. And I'm done.
I'm going to let you finish.
Yes.
But to your point, I think Tim is so unbelievably fast at fixing things that he may cost a lot more by the hour, but the amount of work you're going to get done, and I think that's just an important point to make, because a vendor is maybe a little higher price, that doesn't mean it's going to cost you more to get your film done, because when you're working with people that know what they're doing, things go very smoothly, they go very quickly, and you also get that expertise of prioritizing what you spend your money on. And I think that the concept of like, I'm going to go with the cheap guy regardless, that doesn't necessarily make the best product.
I like the plug for Tim there, Peter. Are you positioning yourself as the cheaper, slower alternative? Is that?
Yeah, plus I do what he does, but I'm half the price. Actually, he's the man, and we're lucky to have him in the Seattle area. No doubt about it.
Very nice. Troy, I always trust the quiet ones. How did you get into this field, and why?
I started out, and I still primarily do commercial work, post spots. I do editorial, but I also come from an online and finishing background, and so that's where my background is. I've done enough feature film stuff and short film, primarily on the finishing side, that I see a lot of the pitfalls that come and land and squarely in my lap, and I'm happy to try to help. Some of the big ones I see can be avoided by starting at the end and working backwards. Start with your goal in mind and work back with what it's going to take to achieve that goal in post.
Can you give an example of that?
Well, I kind of alluded to, and Tim Kirk know what I'm talking about, is you'll show up on set, you've alluded to it, set, you're running 1,000,000 miles an hour, meter's really running fast. There's a sign.
We have a food delivery for the diva.
Thank you.
Wow.
I got a fork.
Not diva at all.
So there may be something really simple that seems like to an inexperienced person might be really difficult to achieve in post. Remove a sign, remove a car in a parking lot on a locked off shot. And all you got to do is take 10 seconds and shoot a plate, and it's super easy to do. But if you haven't consulted ahead of time and know that that's a possibility, you won't know, and you won't shoot a background plate. Then removing the car becomes 10 times harder than it would have been had you shot 10 seconds, which on the set, the meter's running really fast, but 10 seconds rolling with it.
It's where the experience comes in.
Yeah, that's the experience, and I'm happy to lend that wherever I can. And that means call folks like us ahead of time. Before you go on to production, when the earliest stages, when you're formulating the ideas about what you want the end product to be, consult on sound, consult on visual effects, consult on editorial, where it makes sense. And I think I can say we're all happy to do that and encourage you all to do that.
To a point.
Yeah. Like it might cost you lunch.
Well, and to your point, I think one thing, especially in the indie film world, is everyone tries to do everything themselves, and I think there are those rare individuals who are just brilliant at everything, and we all hate them. But me, I like editorial. I have some motion graphics ability and decent at color grading, but I would not hire me to do absolutely every aspect of post-production on something, because I enjoy the editorial and I like goofing around in Photoshop, but the rest of it I don't get much enjoyment out of, and I don't have the drive to really learn it because I get frustrated doing it. And that's where the rest of the experts come in. I think people need to learn to trust that there are people that can, trust the specialists, and find out who they are,
and know that we're supportive of the community.
Yeah. And they're people that they do what they do because they enjoy doing it. They're passionate about it, and there are certain things I can do that I do because someone's asked me, and I really should be better at taking my own advice. But if I have the time and I have the budget, someone says, "Oh, can you color grade this?" I go, "No, but we have money and we'll take it to the specialist." And it's going to be a much better expense ultimately, because you're getting someone who enjoys doing it, has really devoted their time to becoming an expert in it, and ultimately it enhances and it elevates the project.
Yeah,
It is a collaborative medium.
It is, yes.
Yes.
I have a question for the panel. Can I
Yes,
ask?
sure. Can be dueling moderators at the end. Go ahead. Yes.
It starts out with a small anecdote. I worked on a film about a year ago. The film was bought. The film was bought by a distributor. And it came down to the question of proper deliverables for domestic and international release. And there was one of these simple questions on the, I had nothing to do with production on this. We did a fair amount of the post. But there's a question on the little form that says, is this 4x3 safe? See? And I said to myself, I don't know. It turns out, no, it was definitely not 4x3 safe. And we started talking with the studio that bought it about options and cost and pan and scan and all the things that you do to fix that in post. But my question to you guys is, I'm seeing, much like we don't deliver HD cams with Dolby E surround on them anymore to festivals, finally Blu-rays have become legit and so forth and so on, DCPs and whatnot. But tell me about 4x3 from your perspective. Is it gone? Does it matter anymore to some guy in Bulgaria with a CRT 4x3 standard def TV? Do we need to take care of that person? Okay. So you go, guy.
Before you answer that, I'm just curious, how many people know what that means, 4x3 safe? Wow. Okay, so Troy, answer that, but
Yes,
include
good.
So
explanation.
4x3 safe. So anything for broadcast in the United States and a lot of other places technically should be 4x3 safe, meaning that if you produce an HD master, it's 16:9 generally. You take what would be an SD 4x3 shape and place it over that. You
Square
end up with
TV.
pillar box. And that's what's broadcast over the air as at standard definition. So if you put title and graphic and a lower third and it ends up in that pillar block area, anyone who sees it broadcast over the air will see it lopped off on a 4x3 standard def. That's not necessarily true on cable. There's all kinds of exceptions, but the general rule of thumb is make it 4x3 safe if you want to ensure that it's seen. That doesn't just go for titles and graphics, it goes for action on the screen if you want to avoid having to pan and scan. That's why I kind of mentioned start with your end product as best you know, your end deliverable, and work backwards. If you know it's going to be there's going to, your end deliverable is going to be shown in a place that's going to be pillar block or cut, center cut, then you're going to have to remember 4x3 safe or plan to pan and scan your final
You want to explain
version.
what that is too?
Yeah, pan and scan meaning if you have 2 actors, this came up in several things I've worked on over the years, sitting at the edges of your screen and your dialogue is just going back and forth and it could be a locked off shot, but in 4x3 you may not have either one of them in the scene.
Each,
You can have, or nothing. I literally have had it where there's nothing. So what you do is, they call it pan and scan, usually it's cuts. You usually don't pan the image, but it can happen. I've done that too. You end up adding cuts to cut from one side to the other so that they land in the 4x3. What becomes interesting is for that version, you have to create a completely separate version for that to work because you don't have picture information if you take the person on the screen right and move them into screen right on 4x3. So that means 2 masters. Unfortunately, broadcast TV these days will not let you do that. If you're going to shoot something, an episodic for NBC, and you need to be 4x3 safe, you cannot provide them a 4x3 master and an HD master. You need 1 master. So that means you have to be shooting for 4x3 safe right out of the gate. So you've borked yourself really badly if you haven't done that.
If you see Ben-Hur pan and scanned, it's a different movie than if you see it widescreen because it's so ridiculously wide and they use all the screen space. It's pretty amazing. But I didn't know that they wouldn't accept 2 masters.
It's typically a required deliverable to be 4x3 safe, and so we ended up negotiating our way out of that requirement for this particular film. But, and especially as it relates, I think, to the independent film world, I think it's important for people to know you got to be cognizant of 4x3. Right. How much do you need to actually adhere?
Are people accepting letterboxed?
That's
versions?
the workaround, yeah. You can do that to the extent that you're not delivering for broadcast. Broadcast accepts 1 master, an HD master.
Yeah.
There is no SD. You know, if you want to only air SD, you will do it letterboxed, and you will send them an SD master and no HD master. Then it will look like a postage stamp. You know, you'll have a black frame all the way around it. That's your option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine telling David Lean, you know what, it's got to be 4x3 safe. Let's
Right.
cut out those wide compositions.
Right.
Because in the old days, you would often get asked for both. And in the old days, I haven't delivered anything overseas in the last few years, but you used to have to do PAL versions and PAL-M versions and CCAM versions, and you had all these different masters and all these different, slightly different aspects, ratios, and it was just an expense. I mean, you just paid for it and did it because that was what the distributor needed.
Right.
But I'm kind of surprised that they're trying to do it all off of 1 master now.
Well, it's weird. I mean, the standard def market is so small. I mean, you know, the bulk of my revenue comes from doing, locally aired commercials.
Yeah.
And a producer I work with, we've just decided, forget the people with 4x3 televisions. We're shooting HD. We want to use that full space.
Yeah.
We'll make titles, verbiage on the screen, title, 4x3 safe, but we're going to compose for.
Yeah. When we were shooting movies, everything was 1.85, and when I first shot my first widescreen movie, and we're getting the viewfinder with the lines on it, so you can frame. And I asked the guy at the camera store, I said, should I get one that's like double 1.85 and 4x3? He says, why would you want to do that? I said, so that I make sure that everything's for TV. He goes, that's an ancillary market. It's like, we don't care about ancillary markets. Let them deal with the fact that it's all frame drawing.
And I think the idea is that the required deliverables and the market is changing so fast.
Right. Yeah.
I'm personally trying to keep up with where the rules are, because in this case, the studio that bought the film said, we don't care. Screw the guys in Bulgaria.
Yeah.
Well, and that's to the point of most of the people in this room that will probably, 4x3 safe will probably not apply. Just a little asterisk there, probably not apply. So, just ignore everything I said.
Well, I was referencing David Lean, and you're telling me that for Vern Fonk, you're saying screw 4x3. So I don't know what I actually care about at this point. I open it up to you guys for questions for our panel as well. There was big news this week in that Alpha Cine has said they're shutting down the film component of their business. You have already talked about digital has made things more expensive, less expensive,
Yeah,
I
less
should
expensive.
say. Are you going to mourn film at all?
Not at all. No.
Not at all?
No.
Wow, okay.
No, because it's an enormous expense.
Right.
And you everything that starts on digital, it stays on digital. It just goes through the pipeline, yeah. Well, there used to be a much bigger difference back when people were starting to shoot on the Red One and stuff like that, and you could see the stuff that was shot on video, and it was just horrible. And the old-time DPs like Bill Butler and stuff like that, they like refused to shoot digital. It's like, I'm shooting film, but that's all kind of gone by the wayside. The chips now are so great, and the pipeline, the little workflow is so easy now. The whole thing is the difference between your darkest blacks and your hottest whites and what the little D-log E curve is, how that all looks. And when Kodak was doing it, it was designed by artists. They really, really carefully designed their curves so that the film looked good. And when digital first came out, it was designed by engineers, and things were like linear and stuff like that. It's like, why does it look so bad? It's because engineers designed it. But that's all history now. It's now, if you get the right chip, you've got a beautiful piece of film.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the, on the high-end Reds and the Alexa and the high-end digital cameras, you've got that 14 stops of exposure latitude.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And that was the big complaint when the first Reds came out digital video really took off, is you have this compressed exposure latitude and it looks like video. And now things look great now.
And they're getting better. And the cost of really good cameras with great exposure range is like plummeting. There's like independent ones coming on the market that were financed on Indiegogo and stuff like that. You know what I'm talking about? And they look great. And it's like there's like a thing called a digital Bolex that's coming out. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's this little camera that's going to sell for like $5,000, and it's like, it looks like a film camera. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's ridiculously cheap, and they're doing it for, people like us who just want to go out and shoot something, have it look like $1 million. So, and then the other thing that's happening that's exciting is the holy grail is full HDRI capture. And they're just starting to come out with that, where you've got codecs now that will take everything that the eye sees, 1,000,000 to 1 ratio, and compress it. I mean, more than you would ever be able to display on any system. But at that point, you're not taking f-stops anymore, because you're getting it all. Just anything that's there is in the image, and then it's all in post-production, how you pull that out and what kind of look you give it. And it's amazing. Yeah. Amazing world we're in right now.
I sense I'm going to have to upgrade my TV soon.
Yeah. Well, they've got HDRI TVs. Absolutely. Yeah, there's most of the majors are not shooting film anymore. There was an independent guy who made this little hit independent film, and he shot the entire this year. I forget what it was called, but he shot it all on 35 millimeter. And they said, "Why'd you do that?" And he said, "Because the deals I could get. He could get a camera for free, and he could get the lab to do it for him for almost nothing."
We haven't fired this thing up in months.
Yeah. And they're just like, everybody was like so excited to be able to like get a little more mileage out of that processor. And he shot his whole film in 35 for like, he said, less than I could have done it on digital. I was like amazed. But that's a rare thing. This is it doesn't happen anymore.
I mean, the one thing I will miss about film, because I mean it's going to go bye-bye. I mean, I'm glad I got to work with it and shoot on it, because I learned a lot about economy, planning, being very, very, very focused and getting what you need, rather than, okay, let's do another take and another and another and another, because the card isn't full yet. But I used to work in photo labs, and color photography, black and white photography is a toxic nightmare. There's one photo lab I worked at, going into the bleach fix tank, were these tiny little ants with these massive antennas, and they were going into the tank, into the liquid, and coming out. I'm like, what kind of super monster ants are we breeding by working with 35 millimeter color film?
There's one thing I wanted to say, because we're here to talk about post-production, and The biggest change in post-production, in my experience, working in post, with the advent of digital, is the enormous amount of footage you have to go through to cut these days. Because it used to be that you tried to shoot like a 3-to-1 ratio or something, because every time you turned the camera on, it was just like
Throwing dollar bills.
throwing dollar bills down the toilet. It was expensive. And so when you got into editorial, you had a couple of takes, you did one for safety, you might have had a little bit of coverage, but everything was sort of storyboarded out, and you knew exactly how that film was going to get cut together, and you could assemble it pretty fast. And now with digital, people were just turning the camera on in the morning and turning it off at night.
There's a lack of discipline.
That planning, that type of planning still applies.
But-
you want to
Yeah.
apply that to your digital shoots.
But my point is, it drives up the amount of time you spend in post-production because you've got so much footage to wade through. And,
Don't do that.
And it doesn't really give you that many more choices. You just got lots of stuff that you're not going to use. It's almost a nightmare. Yeah.
And as a director, 15 takes of the same performance with almost no difference does no one any good. It just
The
it's more
poor
to
editor
wade
has
through.
to sit and look at them all, and,
then
you're just like,
and then the
what
director's
was
like,
the circled
well,
take?
can we look at the 15th take, and it's identical to take 4, and there's functionally no difference,
Right.
but, like fly flew through, like, use that to motivate the cut. Really, a fly?
Well, the only benefit is I will say that I've saved audio dialogue by having so many takes when the plane flew over or the car alarm went
dropped
off.
it in from
you
the
just
other
drop it in. But
Yeah, you're shooting more audio takes.
yeah, you are.
there you go.
And it's more work on
Well, just so much, Kirk, go.
I mean, if it's a multi-day shoot, I like to get the footage end of day or the next day, so I can actually go through. Because most people don't have a DIT person on set, doing data wrangling. That's the ideal situation where you have someone that's actually taking down scene, shot, take in every single clip. Because that just makes editorial go lightning fast. And, couple that with a good script supervisor and good script notes, your assembly comes together. And it works a lot just like a traditional film-based workflow. That system has existed for so long because it works. And digital really needs to mirror that in a lot of ways. You want to get your dailies. You don't want to get 30 days worth of footage all at once, which is largely how people do it when they don't know. And that's, if you want to give an editor an ulcer, do that. You just dump 30 days of footage on them, and they'll hate the project immediately.
well, and then expect the the first assemble, 3 days later or something.
Yeah.
That's I will say digital. The first thing, if you can have a DIT on set, do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a valid expenditure.
Absolutely. That person will save you headaches and tears later on by, first of all, they'll be buttoned up. They'll have some kind of archive and backup system in place. You won't lose your footage. It's gold. You got to do that. And then also your mileage in editorial will be greatly reduced. The heartache of the editor will be not a heartache. It'll be a blessing. They can concentrate rather than doing logging and just organizing. They're going to be able to concentrate on story.
Fostering their hate for the project.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I was surprised to hear you say that a lot of projects don't use a DIT. I thought it was kind of like essential.
It really is, but I'm a freelancer. I'm working on a lot of very smaller, less experienced projects, and it's viewed as a luxury rather than a necessity. I think it needs to be.
No, it's a necessity.
Because without a proper DIT person, a project I was working on, this very, very long project, we lost all the audio for one day of a guy that they spent 2 days shooting.
No, I can't imagine.
In Madison, Wisconsin. They just
You want to explain DIT?
I don't even know what the
Digital imaging technician.
digital imaging technician. All right. That person's going to take the cards, from the camera and the audio, and is going to, sync them up, name them, and basically wrangle all of your data so that it's in one place, and then the editor can import it into the project and go, oh, okay, this is scene one, shot one, take one. And compare that against the script and the script notes. and go, oh, scene 1, shot 1, take 3 is the one I want to use, and you can really.
If you've got a good script supervisor and a good DIT guy, then this
It assembles itself.
happens pretty fast.
It really does assemble itself.
I mean, I really like the concept of take the what we've learned about organizing from the old days of film when you had to, make sure that doesn't go away by let's just shoot for days, not care, and assemble it later, because that's really not how to make a film. You still need to have that organization and get those notes taken early while everyone still remembers what happened.
Yeah. Well, filmmaking really is all about, making choices, making, very, very informed choices about, story and, utilizing the language of the editor and the cinematographer and everyone. And, that discipline that was cultivated over 100 years of, shooting sync sound film, that logic still applies. Yes. And I think it makes you a far more focused storyteller if that discipline is ingrained in you.
And it saves you money. I mean, it's the right way to do it. So do it, damn it.
That's a good question. Questions about subtitling and captioning and distributing your film. The good news is if you're distributing for a theatrical, DCP allows that to happen really easily. As far as the requirements of having it done, I'm not too up on that part of it, but when it is required, the process is relatively simple if you're doing a DCP. If you're doing a Blu-ray, it's fairly simple to do either one. The hard part's actually doing the captioning and creating the actual file format, which isn't hard. It's just you got to have it done. But the actual technical process of it is fairly straightforward and easily done. Well, that's the great thing about a DCP is that you can provide up to 7 subtitle things in one DCP, and they just enable it on wherever that's being screened. It's just a check mark.
And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the funny thing about it is because it's all digital now, it's so easy. It's almost ridiculously easy. There's little programs that do it. And it used to be, and probably still is, I wouldn't worry too much about it because when you deliver the deliverables to your distributor with the dialogue continuity, if they make a German sale, usually the dubbing or subtitling is done on the other end. That's and you don't have to worry about it.
The Germans go through and screw it up instead of the Americans.
Well, because every territory is different. Some people like to dub and some people like to subtitle.
That's true too.
It's funny, I had a discussion the other day about how in Germany they want the walla in scenes to be in English, and in every other country in the world they all want them to be in that language. There's some weird thing that went on, but they typically know what they want. You want to give them that. You want to make sure your script is actually updated to what actually went on when you shot, per your comment.
But I wouldn't worry about it. It's usually taken care of on the other end. You don't have to think about it. Somebody's going to get paid for that, and you'll never know about it. So.
It's typically up to the people that buy your film,
Yeah.
either whether you have to provide it or whether they'll do that for you or handle it later.
Yeah.
Better and worse. Better and worse. Better in the fact that filmmaking is in the hands of so many. Worse in the fact that it's DSLR footage that's, you know, it's coming from a camera that's never was intended to shoot video. And the compression's horrible. There's so many things about it that are horrible. It's horrible to shoot with, to find your focus and so forth, especially without a cinema lens. Sorry, I'm venting. I haven't seen anything that's good. No, if you take your time and do it right, it can be brilliant and beautiful. And if you shoot the right subject matter, it's brilliant and beautiful. Can be. Shoot the wrong type of thing, wide shots with diagonal lines, and or try to pull focus with a non-cinema lens on the viewfinder. It's horrible. If you aren't watching your exposure either way, don't underexpose it. That's worse than overexposing it.
You can't pull focus on those things. So what can you do? Just have locked off shots where everybody just stands still? As soon as somebody crosses the room, you got to follow focus with them, and it's impossible. So, it's good. Those things are good to make like a little demo. It's like, here's a shot we did on a soundstage that's all like kind of white and washed out, and it's just sitting there, And it's like, wow, that looks really great. But if you actually try to do it in practice, it's like, make the small things difficult, the big things become impossible, you're dead.
Yeah,
It's
and
not going to happen.
I've seen lots of really beautiful things shot on DSLR, 5D, and they're great. There were some myths early on, like really, there were some looks that you could get to put in the cameras that were super protective of your highlights and your lows, so you had this really crunched down range. But when you went to pop that out in post, it looks just ridiculously bad. It caused more problems than it was worth. You're better off to shoot as close as you can to have to the way you want it to look.
Yeah, get a real camera.
Because there's not much latitude.
Most of them save in H.264.
Yeah.
Which is a horrible compression format that was designed for bleeding things on through browsers on the internet.
Yeah.
It's a tiny little crappy.
It can be very good, but it's just at that ratio that they do it in the camera is very bad. And there's line skipping that it does to get from 24 megapixels or whatever down to HD that isn't done the right way. There's lots of problems. But if you shoot an interview, a locked off interview, and the background's out of focus, hey, I've seen stuff look really great.
Thank you for that last bit, because I was starting to have an anxiety attack revisiting a decision to shoot the high bar on DSLRs for the last 6 episodes, so thank you.
I own a Canon 7D, and I love it, but I realize that there are limitations to it, and I use it for certain projects. But I think the absolute worst thing is, everyone who has a 5D, a 7D, a 6D, they love it because I could get this really shallow depth of field. And then they do wide shots where, someone's nose is in focus and just under their eye is in focus, and the entire world is like, looks like, J.J. Abrams' worst nightmare. Unfortunately, I believe that aesthetic is starting to take hold, and, people need to realize that there is more to cinematography than shallow depth of field. There's nothing wrong with 6 feet of your shot being in perfect focus. So.
Well, the good news is there's so many new cameras coming out in the last couple of years, and Blackmagic and some of these companies that are very affordable and giving you guys way more options than you had with your DSLRs. So
Yeah. It all accrues to your benefit. All this technology, it's all great. There's no bad part about it.
You were like the digital prophet over there. Okay, we have time for one, maybe 2 more questions, depending on how good they are.
Well, H.264 can be really good if it's got no ceiling on the data limit. In fact, like Sony's F65 and that XAVC, whatever the heck codec it is a derivative of, it's an H.264 codec, so is HDCam SR. I'd just say as close to RAW as you can get. I mean, I'd rather have a Red RAW or an Arri RAW or the F65 RAW than anything else, but obviously not everybody can do that. The Blackmagic now shoots those little cinema cameras shoot the DNX, or not DNX, what's the frame?
DPX?
No, they're not DPX. They're, what's that? DNGs. Yes, DNGs.
nice.
Escaping me, yes.
Give them a prize.
Yeah, and those are, but your data piles up fast, and it's a frame sequence. It's not a quick time. That's a $10 million question. It can be anything. For films, it's oftentimes DCPs, which is a JPEG 2000 compression. To get there is a process that usually involves an intermediate TIFF sequence, and you convert the color space. There's a whole big.
My company makes DCPs.
Yeah.
So, and I think we're one of the few people in Seattle that probably
make them
does. You make
too,
them
yeah.
too. I mean, it's kind of an art form to it.
Yeah.
But if you're going to theatrical to be projected in a theater, then you need that.
Right.
And most distributors will ask for that now. But otherwise, you're on HD.
Yeah, you're on
HD
if it's,
formats.
Yeah, if it's for distribution somewhere, it's an HDSR or some kind of file format and they're all over the map. You throw a dart, and every network, every company is different.
Ask your vendor.
Right.
Okay, we have time for one more. This is it. This is going to be the beautiful one, the golden one. Let's go. Favorite movie? Fatally Yours. Next.
Mean.
Evil Dead 2.
Shawshank Redemption.
Apocalypse Now.
Oh, nice. Richard Peterson's Big City Dick.
Wow, nice. Throw one out for the locals there.
Yeah.
Well done. So we have learned a lot today, certainly. We've learned that Peter will spill any secret just for a free lunch. Tim costs a hell of a lot per hour, but can finish the post in about 20 minutes, so well worth it. You hate DSLR cameras and all the recent episodes of The High Bar. Thank you so much. And Kirk has given us the plot for a new Marjoe Gortner movie about a race of super ants that go through a chemical bath. Thank you all. A round of applause for all these folks.